They say there are prisons, and then there are places meant to erase a man from the world. Hidden deep in the frozen wilderness of northern Russia, beyond the forests, past the roads, on land where even wolves keep their distance, lies a fortress so feared that locals refuse to speak its name after dark. For decades, whispers have traveled farther than any official report. Whispers of a place where the walls breathe cold, where footsteps echo like tombstones closing, where men vanish not because they escape, but because they break. Tonight, we venture into a prison Russia claims is secure. But the inmates have another name for it, the Alcatraz of the East. Inside these steel gates is a world carved out of isolation and punishment, a place for the country's most dangerous, most unpredictable, and most inconvenient prisoners. Murderers, political radicals, ex-intelligence ghosts, men the state once forgotten. But buried within the concrete history of this prison is a secret almost no one outside its walls has ever heard. A secret tied to a single inmate, one who should have died inside these corridors, yet somehow changed the fate of the entire prison. Before this story ends, you'll question everything you thought you knew about survival, loyalty, and the lengths a government will go to silence the truth. Because what happened inside Russia's harshest maximum security prison was never supposed to be uncovered. Not by journalists, not by investigators, and definitely not by you. Yet here you are. Welcome to the coldest place a human can be sent, and the darkest story the Russian state tried to bury. To understand the horrors of this prison, you have to understand the journey it takes to reach it. No one arrives by accident. No one finds it on a map. The road to the Alcatraz of the East begins with a train, an old Soviet-era monster of steel and rust, draped in frost thick enough to turn metal white. Its windows are barred. Its corridors smell of cold oil and hopelessness. This is the infamous Stolypin prison train, the same model used for decades to move the country's most dangerous men. Every inmate who steps aboard knows what the ride means. Their life, as they knew it, is over. Because once this train starts moving north, it is headed toward a place where mercy never arrives, not even by accident. The further the train travels, the more the landscape begins to change. Villages disappear. Trees shrink. The wind sharpens. There are stretches of tundra so empty that even the guards grow quiet, as if the land itself can hear their thoughts. For hours, sometimes days, there is nothing but white. A pale, endless horizon swallowing everything in sight. The prisoners inside are shackled in pairs, legs bruised and wrists raw. They try not to look out the window, because every man knows the same truth. If you escape out there, you don't run to freedom. You run toward a slower death. And then, without warning, the train slows. The brakes scream against frozen rails. A shadow rises in the distance, massive, dark, immovable. At first glance, it looks like a factory, then a fortress, then something older and far more unforgiving. Thick walls of concrete stretch across the landscape like a scar. Watchtowers loom above the drifting snow, each crowned with glass panels reflecting the sickly grey sky. The entire facility is wrapped by 6 layers of fencing, electrified and stitched with razor wire that sways in the wind like metallic weeds. This is no ordinary prison. This is Black Rock Penitentiary, its official name. But nobody calls it that. To the guards, to the inmates, to the few civilians who dare speak of it, this is the place you resent when the state decides you don't deserve the world anymore. A place designed not just to hold men, but to end them. And as the train doors open with a hiss, the cold slaps the prisoners like a living thing. The guards shout. Chains clatter. Boots crunch on ice. Among the shivering line of new arrivals stands a man whose story will unravel everything this fortress was built to hide. A man no one expected to survive his first week here. A man whose name, soon, will become the center of a secret buried deeper than the permafrost beneath the prison. But for now, he is just another prisoner stepping into hell. Inside Black Rock Penitentiary, the first thing they take from you is your voice. Not your clothes. Not your belongings. Your voice. When the new prisoners are marched through the gates, they are ordered to walk in absolute silence. Anyone who speaks, even whispers, meets the baton of the intake guards. Not as punishment, but as a reminder, you are no longer someone who gets to be heard. The building they enter is colder inside than the weather outside. A concrete corridor stretches forward, lined with metal doors that slam shut behind them one after another, locking out the world with a finality that chills the soul. The guards bark instructions in clipped tones, processed, rehearsed, mechanical. Nothing emotional. Nothing human. In this place, even cruelty feels industrial. Prisoners are shoved into a holding chamber where steam rises from their breath. The walls drip with condensation as if the prison itself is sweating. One by one, they are stripped, searched, shaved, and handed a uniform that feels more like cold canvas than cloth. It is here, between humiliation and shock, that the prisoners first encounter the ritual Black Rock is infamous for. A guard steps forward holding a thick black marker. He doesn't ask for names. He doesn't look at faces. He simply writes a number across each prisoner's chest, large and heavy, the ink bleeding slightly on damp skin. In this prison, you don't earn identity. You inherit a classification. And standing among the line of trembling men is the one prisoner who refuses to bow his head. The one the guards seem unusually wary of. His number is 4387. His real name, unknown to his fellow inmates, is Mikhail. To the outside world, Mikhail was a ghost, a former intelligence analyst who vanished after exposing corruption in a high-ranking state office. Officials called him a traitor. Activists called him a whistleblower. Black Rock called him a threat that needed to disappear quietly. The guards move him through intake faster than the others, avoiding eye contact as if the very sight of him is dangerous. Rumors ripple across the line, barely audible, but felt. Men sentenced for violent crimes, hardened criminals, even ex-soldiers, all watching this single prisoner with a mixture of curiosity and unease. Why him? Why the tension? Why the fear? When the guards finish processing the group, the prisoners are chained together again. But instead of leading them straight to their cells, they're forced into a long corridor painted in peeling grey, where old Soviet-era cameras track every step. This is the orientation hall, though nothing about it welcomes newcomers. It's a corridor designed to teach one lesson through architecture alone. There is no escape. Not from this place. And not from what it will demand of you. At the end of the hall, the prisoners find a massive steel door. A guard swipes a keycard. Sirens warble. Bolts clank. The door parts, revealing the heart of the maximum security zone, a place so silent, so heavy, that even the guards hesitate to step inside. This is where the inmates will live, suffer, break, and where Mikhail's destiny will intertwine with the prison's darkest secret. And as they enter, the entire building seems to exhale, as if Black Rock itself has just welcomed new prey. They call it Cell Block D, but the guards have another name for it, the Deep. It's where Black Rock Penitentiary sends the inmates it doesn't want anyone to see, or hear, ever again. But for the men who live and die inside its walls, it has a much darker name, the freezer for the living. The corridor leading to it is a tunnel of metal grates, locked gates, and flickering lights. An ancient heating system hums overhead, but its warmth never reaches this far down. Instead, a deep, penetrating cold radiates from the walls, settling into your very bones. As new prisoners are escorted inside, their footsteps instinctively soften. Even the toughest men grow quiet. The atmosphere here isn't just oppressive, it feels predatory, like you've stepped into the lair of something that's watching you from the shadows. And that's exactly what's happening. Behind the tiny window slots on each cell door, pairs of eyes blink out from the darkness. Some are curious, some are mocking, but others are hollow and glassy, as if the soul behind them froze over a long, long time ago. Every inmate here is classified as high risk. Dangerous, unpredictable, and supposedly unbreakable. But the cells themselves tell a different story. Each one is barely larger than a walk-in closet, with concrete walls slick with frost, a steel bed bolted to the ground, and a toilet crusted with grime. A narrow slit of a window offers no view of the sky, only the endless, blinding stretch of ice outside. Years ago, an inmate scratched a sentence into the wall of cell 23, one the guards could never fully buff out. It reads, "In here, time isn't passing. It's circling, waiting to eat you." One prisoner, Mikhail, inmate 4387, is marched deeper into Block D than the others. While the rest are sent to their cells, he's taken beyond a final, reinforced door, into a wing no inmate has ever returned from willingly. It's a place known only by whispers, Sector 9. The doors here are thicker. The lights are dimmer. Even the guards wear extra layers, as if the cold itself is sharper, more deliberate in this part of the prison. When Mikhail reaches his assigned cell, the guard unlocking it hesitates, not from reluctance, but from something that looks a lot like fear. He refuses to meet Mikhail's eyes, muttering a single question under his breath. Why did they send you here? Before Mikhail can answer, he's shoved inside. The heavy door slams shut, bolts slide into place, and then silence. His cell is darker than the others. The window slit is higher up, almost out of sight. The air is so cold it tastes like metal. In the corner, on the floor, Mikhail spots something strange, a long, fresh scratch mark. It's as if someone before him tried to claw their way out, not through the concrete, but through sheer desperation. For the first time since arriving at Black Rock, Mikhail's expression changes. It isn't fear. It's recognition. He knew this place held secrets. Just not this one. Far down the corridor, a distant sound breaks the silence. A slow, uneven rhythm, like metal tapping against metal. Clink, clink, clink. It grows louder, closer, echoing off the walls with a disturbing familiarity. The guards stiffen. One grips his baton tighter. Another whispers, "Not now, please, not now." Whatever is coming, it isn't part of the routine. As the tapping approaches Sector 9, Mikhail steps toward his cell door, listening. Because the rhythm isn't random. It carries a pattern, a message, a warning. Whatever it is, it marks the beginning of a secret Black Rock has buried for longer than any inmate has been alive. And soon, it will pull Mikhail into a truth no one was ever meant to find. Inside Sector 9, the walls don't just hold men, they remember them. Every scream, every whisper, every desperate plea for mercy is etched into the concrete, layered over decades of human despair. Mikhail sits on the edge of his steel bed, listening to that rhythm. Clink, clink, clink. It's not random. The sound carries intelligence, a slow, deliberate pattern, like a language only the damned can understand. He presses his ear to the wall. He can hear movement behind it. Slow, careful, almost ritualistic. Prisoners in Sector 9 aren't supposed to move at night, not without permission. Yet something, or someone, is moving within these walls. It's alive, aware, and patient. From across the corridor, another tapping begins, responding to the first. Clink, pause, clink, pause, like a conversation held through metal and concrete. Mikhail leans back, a shiver running down his spine that has nothing to do with the cold. He's not alone here. Not in the way he thought. Ghost stories about Sector 9 circulate among the inmates like currency. One tells of a man who vanished into the walls, leaving behind only scratches and the faint echo of footsteps. Another claims a voice spoke to him from behind the concrete, warning him to flee, even though escape is impossible. These aren't just stories. They're warnings, survival tips coded in fear. Tonight, Mikhail is about to find out which ones are real. The tapping intensifies. A shadow passes by his cell window, long, thin, almost human, but it moves in a way a man shouldn't. The air fills with a faint, metallic smell, cold and bloodless. And then, complete silence. The kind of silence that roars in your ears. Mikhail waits, his breath shallow. Seconds stretch into minutes. He feels a subtle vibration pulse through the wall beneath his fingers. And a single thought hits him with brutal clarity. Black Rock is alive. Not as a metaphor. It's alive. Watching. Choosing. Punishing. And for some reason, it has singled him out. Suddenly, a whisper cuts through the silence, so faint it's almost lost in the hum of the prison. 4387, you weren't meant to survive here. Mikhail freezes. The voice isn't coming from outside. It's inside his head. But it originates from somewhere deep within the prison itself, deep within the walls. Fear would have consumed any other man. But Mikhail, trained, meticulous, and haunted by a past no one could touch, knows this isn't a threat. It's an invitation. And in Black Rock, invitations like this are a rare and dangerous thing. As he presses his palm against the cold wall, he feels it again. Not a tapping this time, but a warmth. Small, deliberate, almost human. It's impossible. Yet he can't ignore it. Somewhere in Sector 9, a secret is waiting. A secret the government tried to bury. A secret men have died for. And it may decide whether Mikhail becomes another forgotten statistic, or the man who uncovers what Black Rock has hidden for decades. The rhythm returns. The whisper returns. And Mikhail knows, in that frozen cell, that nothing in this prison is what it seems. Everything in Black Rock is alive, and it's watching him. Night falls over Black Rock Penitentiary, but in Sector 9, darkness is manufactured. Every window is shuttered, every lamp is dimmed, and every shadow is stretched to disorient and break the mind. Mikhail lies on his steel bed, eyes open, ears straining. The rhythmic tapping has stopped, or maybe it's just become too subtle to hear over the pounding of his own heart. The temperature drops in sharp, sudden waves. His breath comes out in thick clouds, and his fingers turn numb on the cold metal. He realizes the cell ain't just cold. It is designed to strip you of every sensory comfort, to make sleep impossible and thought a heavy burden. Then he hears it, a scraping sound. Not from the wall this time, but from the floor beneath him. It's slow, deliberate, almost ceremonial. Clang. Scratch. Clang. A pattern emerges. Someone, or something, is moving in the tunnels beneath the prison. Sector 9 was built over old Soviet infrastructure, tunnels that predate the prison itself. The government claims they are sealed. The inmates say otherwise. Mikhail knows better than to dismiss either story. Suddenly, a whisper floats through the vent above his cell. Do you hear it? 4387? Do you see it? They never leave, not really. The voice vanishes before he can respond. Mikhail lies back, his mind racing. He cycles through every intelligence technique he ever learned, profiling, observation, psychological manipulation, but nothing fits this place. This isn't just a prison. It's a living organism. A predator that anticipates, reacts, and tests its prey. Hours pass, or maybe minutes. Time has no meaning here. A distant scream pierces the night. Short, sharp, and cut off without an echo. It's not a cry for help. It's a warning. The other inmates in the block remain silent. Some press their faces to the bars, peering into the darkness, trying to see what cannot be seen. Others mutter prayers under their breath. They all know the unspoken rule. Anyone who reacts too loudly disappears. Mikhail sits upright. He isn't afraid, not yet. He's calculating, observing, waiting. And then he notices it. Beneath the floorboards of his cell, a faint glow appeared, almost too dim to see. It flickered rhythmically, perfectly in sync with a distant tapping, whispering, and scratching. Something was trying to communicate. Mikhail leaned in closer, his fingertips pressing against the cold wood. He could feel a pulse, a faint thrumming. It was alive. Not human, but sentient. He didn't understand it, not yet. He had no idea if this was some kind of elaborate trap. He only knew one thing for certain. If he wasn't incredibly careful, this prison would swallow him whole. Just like all the others before him, he would vanish into its very walls, leaving behind nothing but a number, a whisper, and the lingering echoes of his fear. Deep down, Mikhail knew this was only the beginning. In Black Rock, survival wasn't just about enduring the guards or the biting cold. It was about understanding the prison itself and the secret it had been hiding for decades. The next morning arrived without any ceremony. There was no sunlight, no birdsong, just a flat, grey light filtering through tiny slits in the concrete, so sharp it felt like it could cut your eyes. Mikhail pushed himself up from the steel bed, his body stiff from the cold and from the long hours he'd spent lying awake, listening. In Sector 9, every single movement was calculated. Every sound was observed. Even the simple act of breathing could betray a prisoner to someone, or something, that was always watching. As he started to examine his cell, Mikhail noticed the floorboards were slightly misaligned. It was almost imperceptible, but it was just enough to suggest recent movement. He knelt down, pressing his ear to the tiny gap. A faint scuffling sound answered him from below. It wasn't human. It wasn't an animal. It was something ancient. Maybe mechanical, but it felt alive. The tapping from the night before started up again, but this time it was slower, more deliberate. It was directed right at him. He traced the lines of the floorboards with his fingers, feeling a slight draft seeping through a thin crack. It wasn't a cold draft. It was warm. It felt like breath, like air, like life. Then, without any warning, the floor shifted beneath his hands. A panel slid open, revealing a hidden passage that had been buried beneath decades of concrete, dust, and secrecy. Mikhail froze. Every one of his instincts screamed at him to back away, to run. But that pulse of curiosity, the very same impulse that had made him a threat to the Russian government in the first place, overrode his fear. He looked down into the darkness. The passage descended like a stairway into the prison's underworld. The faint glow he'd noticed the night before flickered from within, beckoning him forward. Mikhail took a deep breath and stepped inside. As he descended, the air grew warmer. The walls, which had been solid concrete above, were now covered in inscriptions, scratched messages, numbers, strange symbols. Some were in Russian. Others were in codes that no one could possibly decipher. Each mark told a story of men who came here and simply vanished, men who defied the system and somehow managed to survive, and men who found the secret of Black Rock and paid the ultimate price for it. At the bottom of the passage, he found a small chamber. The source of the glow was a makeshift lantern sitting on the floor, and next to it, a figure sat cross-legged. It wasn't a guard. It wasn't an inmate. It was someone, or something, that simply should not exist. The figure lifted its head slowly. Its face was partially obscured by shadows, but its eyes reflected a terrifying mix of knowledge and madness. 4387, the figure said, his voice raspy and almost ethereal. They've been waiting for you. We've all been waiting. Mikhail swallowed hard. This was no ordinary prisoner. This was a survivor. Someone who had lived in Black Rock long enough to understand it, not just as a prison, but as a living, breathing entity. And for the first time, Mikhail realized the truth he had been sensing all along. The prison wasn't the enemy. The prison was the gatekeeper. And whatever lay beyond this hidden passage was the secret the government had spent decades trying to bury. But unlocking it would come with a price. And in Black Rock, the price was survival itself. The figure seated in the chamber watched Mikhail with an eerie, unnerving calm. He wasn't fearful. He wasn't hostile. He was just aware. His face was gaunt, with sharp cheekbones and eyes sunk deep into dark hollows. His beard grew in ragged, silver-threaded patches. His clothes were a strange mix of prisoner scraps and makeshift fabrics woven from who knows what. But the most unsettling thing about him was this. He looked like a man who had lived in total darkness for years, yet his eyes moved with the clarity of someone who had seen everything. He gestured for Mikhail to sit. 4387, he said again softly. You walk with the weight of a man who knows too much. That's why they sent you to Sector 9. That's why they sent me. Mikhail's jaw tensed. Who are you? He asked, his voice low. The man smiled slowly. It was a tired, knowing smile. Once, I was called Sergei Antonov. The name hit Mikhail like a physical blow. Sergei Antonov wasn't just any inmate. He was the ghost of Black Rock. A political prisoner. A high-profile whistleblower. A man the government had officially declared dead nearly 5 years ago. Yet here he was. Alive. Breathing. Living underneath the prison. A man who shouldn't exist. Mikhail shivered, but not from the cold. It was a shiver of revelation. If Sergei was alive, the state had lied. And if the state lied about his death, what other truths had they buried? Sergei leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. This prison is not what you think, 4387. Sector 9 is more than just punishment. It's a filter. A sorter. It's a test. A test? Mikhail asked quietly. Sergei nodded. Only certain men are sent here. Men who know secrets. Men the government fears. Men who are too dangerous to let live, but too valuable to simply kill. Mikhail felt the weight of Sergei's words settle over him like a layer of frost. Sergei continued, his voice low and almost hypnotic. They don't want us dead. Not yet. They want to see who breaks. Who bends. Who survives long enough to be useful again. The very walls around them seemed to hum with a faint, pulsing energy, as if the prison itself was listening in on their conversation. Mikhail's eyes drifted to the strange symbols etched into the stone. Some of them matched intelligence codes he had once deciphered during his career. Others were military designations he recognized. And others still. They looked older, almost ritualistic. Who carved these? Mikhail asked. Sergei's smile faded. Men who came before us. Men who left messages for those who would follow. Some messages are warnings. Some are maps. And some are confessions. Mikhail stepped closer to the wall. One symbol in particular stood out, a circle with 3 straight lines cutting through it. He recognized it instantly. It was a covert marking used only by deep state operatives. A symbol he had seen tied to classified programs he was investigating right before he was arrested. His pulse quickened. Sergei watched him, his expression unreadable. You've seen it before. Mikhail nodded slowly. It was stamped on documents my superiors tried to erase. Sergei leaned in closer, his expression now grave. Then you already know the truth. Black Rock isn't just a prison. It's a vault. A vault for secrets too dangerous for the world to ever know. Mikhail's breath caught in his throat. A vault. a vault constructed from human suffering and frozen concrete walls. Sergei whispered, his voice barely audible, and 4387, you were brought here because you have a key. Mikhail's blood ran cold. Before he could even form a response, the ground trembled. A low vibration rippled through the chamber, and dust rained down from a ceiling. The small lantern flickered wildly. Sergei stiffened, his eyes darting towards the passage. They've noticed you're gone. Then, with a voice as cold as the prison itself, he added, and once they start looking in Sector 9, they don't stop until someone disappears. Above the hidden chamber, Sector 9 awakens like a disturbed beast. Heavy boots thunder through the corridors. Keys jingle. Radios crackle. Guards are shouting orders with an urgency that can only mean one thing. Someone is missing. And in Black Rock Prison, a missing inmate isn't an inconvenience, it's a crisis. Mikhail and Sergei exchange a silent look. The tremor in the floor grows stronger. Dust cascades from the ceiling like falling ash. Sergei grabs Mikhail's shoulder. You need to listen to me carefully, he whispers, his voice tight with dread. When they begin a search in Sector 9, they don't count prisoners, they eliminate possibilities. Mikhail frowns. Meaning what? Sergei breathes. Meaning, if they can't find you, they'll assume you escaped into the walls. And the protocol for that is simple. They seal the area permanently. Mikhail understands instantly. Sealing the area means flooding it with freezing gas. Or worse, collapsing it. Black Rock doesn't ask questions. It buries them. Sergei points to another tunnel branching off from the chamber, narrower and darker than the one Mikhail came from. This way, he murmurs. Stay close. And no matter what you hear, do not stop moving. They descend into the passage. The walls tighten around them, the air thins. It feels less like a tunnel and more like being swallowed by the earth itself. Above them, the muffled voices of guards echo through the stone. Check every cell. He didn't just vanish. No one survives down there. Their footsteps pound the floorboards overhead like a drumbeat of doom. Sergei moves with a surprising speed and familiarity. He's been here before, many times. This dark labyrinth is his domain. But Mikhail notices something odd. Sergei keeps glancing over his shoulder, not at the guards, but at the darkness behind them, as if something else is following. After several minutes, they reach a small alcove carved out of the rock. Sergei stops abruptly. Here, he whispers. Wait. Mikhail listens. The faint hum of the prison fades beneath the sound of something sharper. A scraping noise. Not metal. Not boots. Something more organic. Something ancient. Sergei, Mikhail mutters. What is that? Sergei's face hardens. That's why men disappear down here. The guards are only half the danger. Before Mikhail can ask anything else, a violent shudder tears through the passage. Lights flicker. Stone shifts. A siren blares somewhere deep above them. Short, sharp, unmistakable. Containment breach. Sergei grabs Mikhail's arm and drags him deeper into the alcove. They're sealing the upper levels, he says. We have minutes, maybe less. Mikhail steadies himself against the wall. Then tell me the truth. What is this place really? What's buried under Black Rock? Sergei hesitates, just for a moment. Then his voice drops to a whisper, trembling with a secret too heavy for one man to carry. Black Rock was built on top of a closed Soviet research site. It wasn't for weapons. It wasn't for prisoners. He leans closer. It was designed to study something they found in the permafrost, something that never died. Mikhail's pulse spikes. What did they find? Sergei looks at him with hollow, haunted eyes. Something that was waiting. The chamber vibrates again, stronger this time. A metallic groan echoes through the tunnels. And then, a sound. Low. Wet. Breathing. Something is in the tunnels with them. Sergei nods toward the darkness ahead. If you want to live, he whispers, you have to follow me now. Mikhail swallows hard, forcing himself forward. As he steps into the deeper darkness, the breathing grows louder. Closer. Behind him, the tunnel lights flicker violently, and then go out. And in that total blackness, something moves. In the end, the storm settled. The alarms faded. The echoes of boots, shouts, and metal doors slammed into silence, and the frozen winds reclaimed the prison's breath. Medvedkovo Fortress, Russia's Alcatraz of the East, stood exactly where it always had, unmoving, unshaken, unforgiving. But the men inside, they weren't the same. Some were transferred. Some were buried in unmarked graves beneath the ice, and a handful were released back into a world that had already forgotten their names. Yet the story that survived wasn't the escape attempt. It wasn't the riots, the fires, or even the secret files that vanished. The story that lived was the silence that followed. Because even now, years later, every time someone asks about Medvedkovo, officials give the same answer: it remains secure. But the documents don't match the testimonies. The testimonies don't match the survivors. And the survivors, they don't talk at all. Not about the night the power died, the missing warden, or the man who exposed a system built on fear. But here is what we do know. A prison this old remembers. It remembers the boots that marched through its corridors, the secrets sealed behind frozen iron, and the men who tried to break it, and the men it broke in return. Somewhere, buried deep beneath the stone foundation, lies the final piece. A message smuggled out by an inmate who should have never survived. A warning written on a torn ration card. Some prisons keep you inside. This one keeps you quiet. Whatever happened inside Russia's harshest prison was never just about punishment. It was about control. About erasing voices powerful enough to shake the walls of a nation. But no matter how cold the fortress, no matter how thick the ice, the truth has a way of thawing its way out. And now, you've heard it. This is the end of the story. At least, the part they couldn't bury. Thanks for watching.